So we're in your United States history book in the last chapter, chapter 30, section 2, on Barack Obama's administration. We're going to go over the election of 2008, domestic policy, Deepwater Horizon oil spill, illegal immigration, government agency scandals, foreign policy, a change in strategy, and Arab Spring. So some of these things you probably have never heard about. So this will be very, very interesting. So we're going to begin here, but here's some pictures of Barack Obama, the next president administration we're going to be looking into here. And here's his family, as you can see here with Michelle Obama, and on to here, down here, you can see when he was younger, and his mother down here and stuff. I always put some pictures of the presidents when they were younger. So let's begin. There were many problems in 2008. Under the George W. Bush administration in 2008, there was a great recession going on as the bottom fell out, especially in the housing market. The housing bubble burst and people had lost their homes. So the 44th president coming would have to face many pressing issues, both at home and abroad. Victory in Iraq demanded a long-term American presence there, and this was very unpopular to have soldiers in Iraq. Record high gas prices and the sluggish housing market hindered the economy. And President Bush's approval rating was historically very low, and many Americans longed for a change in 2008. The election of 2008, we see Barack Obama wins. Well, the Republican nominee was Senator John McCain, right here. And he lived in 1936 to 2018, and he was of Arizona. He alienated himself from Bush to attract more voters, but he didn't. The Democratic nominee choice was narrowed to two, and that was Senator Hillary Clinton, who was the former First Lady, and Senator Barack Obama. Barack Obama won the nominee, and he ran from the state of Illinois. He was a charismatic Black American born in Hawaii, and he campaigned on the themes of hope and change. So he was born in 1961. Here's a picture of Barack Obama here. Obama defeated Clinton and chose Senator Joe Biden, who was born in 1942. Joe Biden was from the representative of Delaware at that time for his running mate. The 2008 election seemed to grab the attention of more Americans with a record-breaking turnout of Americans voting. Barack Obama's campaign easily won him the presidency as he got 365 electoral votes to McCain's only 173. Obama became the 44th president and the first Black American president, and his wife, Michelle Obama, became the first Black American First Lady. So Obama wins in 2008. Okay, his domestic policy. So Obama dealt with domestic problems from the Bush administration with the housing crisis and the rising debt, all those things that were going on. But he had his own agenda of things he wanted to change, such as race relations and health care. So when I think of Obama, you think of race relations and what was going on in the world right then. And of course, we'll know health care, and we'll be talking about Obamacare, right? His goal was to fundamentally transform the United States of America. Here we have, he said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. So his was changing everything that was going on. Barack Obama's his whole administration, as he put forth, was a fundamental transformation of America. So what is he thinking about fundamental transform in the United States? What are his thoughts? Where is his foundation at? So let's begin. Or let's go on, I should say. First of all, there were race relations. He was very particular to solving race relations, and many Americans many American views about race relations had improved at the time Obama was inaugurated. So everybody thought things are improving with race, right? But problems with race relations declined after Obama came into the office. And so race riots in places such as Ferguson, Missouri, and in Baltimore, Maryland, greatly escalated racial tensions and worsened strife between minorities and local police. So Obama's attempts to resolve these problems often seemed to make things worse. His association with Reverend Jeremiah Wright, a liberal theology minister who preached provocative racial and political sermons, seemed to hamper the president's ability to resolve the issues. By the last year of Obama's presidency, public perception of race relations was at a 20-year low. So here we have now more race riots going on, and especially in the inner cities, in Ferguson, Missouri. I don't even think that is an inner city, but a lot of race problems and race relationships between the police and between minorities. So we have all kinds of things going on. So in the midst of this time, pretty sad. Economy and the stimulus. So let's talk about the economy. So Obama's program he called to stimulate the economy. That's what he wanted to do. So President Obama attempted to aid recovery from the Great Recession. The Great Recession was that, in 2008 when the bottom fell out. I remember that time, and we almost lost our houses that we had built and everything, and everyone was losing, and businesses even were closing down. So from that point, he wanted to aid the recovery. His first effort was massive Keynesian spending. This program was implicated in the Obama administration in 2009, and it was referred to as the stimulus because it was intended to stimulate economic recovery. So the stimulus package spent over $800 billion, but the economy remained weak. I was thinking, maybe that's not 800, but it may be. So I'll look that up and tell you. But I think it is $800 billion. That was kind of shocking. Obama continued the practice of bailing out financial institutions that had made unwise investments under government pressure, essentially rewarding unsound financial institutions with taxpayer money. So what was Keynesian spending? We know Keynesian spending, when we think of that, I always think under FDR, under Roosevelt's administration. And because it was basically to keep spending. Keynesian economics is a macroeconomic theory of total spending in the economy and its effects on output, employment, and inflation there. So here we have the stimulus by government spending. So he believed the more we spend, this Keynesian, that it's going to stimulate the economy to come back to normal. But it's kind of very much of a socialistic theory, the Keynesian. You can look up Keynesian theory. We already went over that before in the past. But basically, a lot of socialistic countries use this theory, and the government actually taking more control of the money situation in the nation. And that's what Keynesian is. So he thought this would stimulate the economy. And so basically that was the stimulus. Government bailouts. So government bailouts even extended to organizations like automobile manufacturers, such as the big three automobile at that time were Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. So Ford refused the bailout and weathered through its financial crisis. It did not take the bailout. Chrysler was bought out by a European company and then defaulted on billions of dollars of debt in doing so. And GM, the largest of these automobile companies, GM was the largest, filed for bankruptcy protection and was granted loans. The government bought about 60% of GM's stock, making the government its primary owner of GM. But since in 2013, the government sold its stock, and now it's not owner of GM today. But back then, it was 60% of the stock at that time, trying to bail out. At the midst of what was going on, a lot of companies had gone into foreclosure. The entire government bailout resulted in about $15 billion loss for the Treasury. So $15 loss is $15 billion loss. Did I say billion? $15 billion loss for the Treasury. So the government bailout here, we have picture, auto bailout, Chrysler there being actually in the worst condition in the midst, and GM being bought by the government, or owned by the government, 60% of it at least. So government bailouts. Healthcare. Barack Obama had campaigned for national health care, specifically national health insurance. Spearheaded by Democratic majorities in Congress, Obama's health care bill passed in spite of most Americans' disapproval of government-run medicine. The new law's individual mandate required all Americans possess a minimum quality of health insurance or pay a fine. This would hurt health insurance industry and make it harder for Americans to acquire health care later on. Also, this would needlessly intrude government into the lives of people, of citizens. So basically, healthcare, what people were worried about is now, the government's going to take over our healthcare. Now, what is this going to do? Obama's healthcare bill, everyone looked at it, and especially in Congress, thinking, is this going to help or hurt our economy? Is it going to help or hurt, those Americans that have it? Will some of them lose their health insurance? Will some of them lose their doctors? Which he said they wouldn't, but indeed a lot of them did. So would it make it harder for Americans to acquire health care and to acquire good health care? So all these questions were up in the air at this time. But Barack Obama, he basically wanted to be able to establish national health care and national health insurance, which means that everyone would have to pay for health insurance. Put forth what's called the Affordable Care Act, ACA. Basically, this is Obamacare. So, March 2010, Obama signed the Affordable Care Act, also called Obamacare, into a law. Obamacare received a mixed response from the courts, with some judges upholding the rules while others ruled them unconstitutional. One case said nowhere in the Constitution was Congress given power to make someone buy a product like health insurance. The question reached the Supreme Court, and they voted 5-4. Majority upheld the law, saying the individual mandate was constitutional because the law's fine was a form of taxation, a constitutional power. So basically they said, where in the Constitution do people have to buy health insurance from the government? And then as they argued this over, they said, well, let's just say it's just a tax. That, the Constitution says the government can, form taxes or tax the people. So let's just call Obamacare a tax. And so they did that. And that way Obamacare could go through. So Affordable Care Act, it was called. So there was much, argument about the case of national health insurance in Obamacare, right? So this is very foundational to President Obama in his transforming America, right? Obamacare increased Americans' costs. Obama believed that millions more Americans would receive health care coverage. Opponents argued that the greater coverage could have been achieved without a new tax or government program. After Obamacare took effect, the cost of health insurance increased for many Americans to pay the cost of those who now paid much less. So Obama said, if you like the plan, you have to keep it. If you like the doctor you can keep your doctor too. So he's saying, well, if you like the plan of health insurance you can keep it. We'll go through Obamacare. So he's trying to make compromises there and trying to say, oh, you can keep your doctor. Yet many lost not only their health insurance plan, they lost their health insurance plan, but as a result of Obamacare, they also lost their doctors. So Obama's broken promise became a criticism from Republicans saying, Obamacare is not working. So here's Obamacare turning your doctor's office into the DMV. I like that. Now we're going to turn our doctor's office into the government, the DMV, and they'll tell us what we're supposed to do. So here's paging Dr. Obama. These are just some little spoofs on there. So let's go on. Obamacare subsidies. What are Obamacare subsidies? Well, they subsidize abortions. So we knew that they did that. So certain organizations, especially Hobby Lobby, they go to court about paying taxes in this, that have to do with Obamacare and such, because of that they're in doing so, they felt they were subsidizing for contraceptive drugs and the use of abortions, So under Obamacare, abortions were subsidized and mandated. Business paid for contraceptive drugs as part of the health insurance plan. Hobby Lobby, a family-owned business, opposed this on religious grounds, which brought the question all the way to the Supreme Court. So Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. The court ruled that certain businesses had the right to refuse to pay for contraceptives that were in conflict with their religious beliefs. And under contraceptives, of course, is abortions. It's kind of weird. When you think of abortions, you don't think of contraceptives, but in some countries, like when I went into Russia, a lot of the women had multiple abortions because that was their method of contraceptive. And they said contracepting, they were aborting the babies at that point, to prevent being pregnant, is what they're saying. So abortion is not a viable word for a contraceptive in itself. But anyway, so this got into debate, and Hobby Lobby actually won this case. So this is a big deal. Rising Debt Budget Control Act in 2011. So Rising Debt Budget Control Act. So what's this going to be about? So let's just look up here. It says, in 2011, federal statute to increase the United States debt ceiling and avoid the risk of sovereign default. It's basically now to raise our debt ceiling. So that means, of course, the Keynesian theory is to spend money with the government so you can raise that, so you can spend more money, that's how I see it. So within the first year of Obama's presidency, Congress raised the debt ceiling, the amount of debt that the Treasury can issue, and raised it 3 times. So the debt ceiling is the amount of debt a Treasury can issue, and Obama raised it how many times? 3 times. 3 times. So a grassroots movement means ordinary people that are not from political parties, of fiscal conservatives. They were called the Tea Party. I remember the Tea Party. And they helped Republicans gain control of the House of Representatives in 2010. So a standoff developed between Republicans and Democrats in the government again. Finally, both agreed to the Budget Control Act of 2011, which raised the debt ceiling and established a Congressional Select Committee to negotiate a budget and cut spending. But the committee could not agree to the budget, and this triggered sequestration. Sequestration process would set automatic spending caps. So after the budget control, the economy slightly improved, but it continued to waste, overregulate, and to be inefficient. The conflicts over spending led to a 17-day government shutdown in 2013. So not too good of things. We have basically raising the debt ceiling here 3 times, and on to trying to get through the Budget Control Act of 2011. In 2013, the government would have to shut down. So we have major problems going on with Budget Control Act in the midst of all this. But now we do have Republicans and Democrats both Republicans and Democrats in Congress dealing with these issues too. So it's not a majority now of a liberal type spending in the Congress. Now we're going to another subject, Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So in April in 2010, an oil rig called Deepwater Horizon, it was operated by the British Petroleum in the Gulf of Mexico. And it suddenly exploded and spilled almost 5 million barrels of oil. The oil spread through the Gulf, killing wildlife, poisoning the water, and washing up on the beaches. Not only the oil, but the dead wildlife, washing up the beaches of all the Gulf. The U.S. government and British Petroleum, BP, tried and failed to seal the oil well until finally it succeeded in September. So it kept going for that long a period of time. Finally in September they sealed it. And their efforts were inadequate, and BP used dispersants that some scientists believe were even more toxic than the oil. So in 2014, the United States Coast Guard held BP responsible, with Obama promising to make BP pay for all these damages. The government settled a deal with BP, which cost the oil company $20 billion on top of the billions that they lost in trying to clean up the spill. So here we have British Petroleum here, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf, which turned to be a major, major deal. And for a long time, it took a long time to clean up this mess in the Gulf. I live in the Gulf right now, so I can imagine. I remember my nephew was telling me about it when he was living in Panama City Beach, and how the beaches now were the white beaches were covered with black oil. And he said nobody wants to go to the beach now. So now they're cleaned up, but that was a major oil spill. Illegal immigration. About 11 million illegal aliens were estimated living in the United States. Obama had long favored giving amnesty, government pardon, to illegal aliens, and eventually giving them a path to citizenship. So he was saying, okay, we can give them pardon, all these illegal aliens, we'll make them citizens. The Republicans argued that amnesty and citizenship would create an incentive for even more aliens to enter the country illegally. So they were saying, if you start just let illegal aliens, as they come in illegally, have citizenship, then that's the way everybody's going to do it, right? And they accused the Democrats of wanting to do so for more votes, saying the only reason is you're trying to get votes from them. So also, illegal aliens would not willingly or readily assimilate as legal immigrants. So those are coming in that really want to be citizens of the United States and really want to be patriotic would come in the right way. And those that are just coming in, sneaking in illegally, would not want to assimilate, but kind of just live their own thing. So some of them were involved in drug cartels that were coming in to bring drugs in. And so Obama proposed an amnesty bill, but the House of Representatives found it unacceptable and refused to pass it to give amnesty to illegal aliens. Frustrated, Obama decided that he would go around Congress by issuing executive orders deferring deportation of alien parents of Americans called DAPA, and aliens brought in as children called DACA. So just think of DAPA with the P is parents. That means if they bring their parents in, and these are if they're bringing their children in. So he was saying, okay, then we're going to go around and we're going to give orders to basically, as they bring these in, that they wouldn't be considered aliens anymore, right? Because not so they wouldn't be deported. So this caused a number of court battles which remained unresolved until after the Obama administration. So DAPA was halted by the Supreme Court, but they did go on, and they did with the children, DACA, they called in not the deportation to deport children. So they said parents, but we're not going to deport the children in this point. So this is a huge, gigantic mess. Let's see the pictures here. President Obama's Immigration Acts. The Supreme Court. Obama believed the Constitution was a living document, which is erroneous. It's an error. It's not true that it is a living document. So it's an erroneous idea that the Constitution should be reinterpreted to match what justifies perceives to be the culture in the present time. So basically what this says here, I kind of wrote it wrong here, but basically it's an erroneous idea that the Constitution to be interpreted to match the culture. So he's saying, as our culture is different, then the Constitution needs to change, right? Now that could be any way. You could do anything in that situation with the Constitution. So he was saying, since we're changing culture now and our culture is not so Christian oriented, we can change the Constitution into this living document to fit us instead of the population that was back then, is what he's saying. So, bad idea. But this is the idea that a lot of people have today, is that the Constitution just can be changed as a whim to fit the culture. So this had been to enact policies such as nationwide abortion. So he was saying, okay, now we need to fit abortion into the Constitution. In accordance with this philosophy, Obama appointed 2 liberal judges to replace 2 of the court justices. So 2 of the liberal judges he put in were Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and she was appointed by Obama in 2009. She was the first Hispanic American on the Supreme Court. And then in 2010, Elena Kagan was appointed to the Supreme Court also. So these are 2 of his court appointees of the Supreme Court. So what he was looking at, again, is a different way of looking at the Constitution, basically saying that the Constitution needs to fit into the culture instead of the Supreme Court decisions and all these fitting, into the Constitution. Because the Supreme Court, what's the Supreme Court for? It's to really to tell whether certain laws that come through are constitutional or not, whether they fit the Constitution. So the Supreme Court judges were very important at that time to get a law through, and Obama knew this. Another Supreme Court justice to pick. So Supreme Court Justice Anton Scalia died in February of 2016. So 2016 is right at the end. Basically in 2016, we're going to be getting a new president, right? So the Democrats were eager to fill this seat with another to secure a left-wing majority on the Supreme Court. Obama nominated a candidate, but the Republicans controlled the Senate and argued that this nomination would have to be done by the winner of that year's presidential election. So Obama's nomination expired when he left in office in 2017. So the next Supreme Court would have to be picked by the next administration. Who would be the next administration? Well, I'm looking forward here. We have President Trump. President Trump actually appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court. So we see that's a big deal. 3 new justices that were conservative, and all 3 of them did not believe in abortion. They did not justify abortion. So that's a great thing that happened under the next administration. Then we have the Supreme Court, Obergefell and Hodges. Obergefell and Hodges were same-sex marriage. Because a solid liberal majority was never secured during Obama, the Supreme Court wavered between judicial activism, going beyond the power, and originalism, interpreted by the Founding Fathers' intent. That's what we just talked about, is that they were saying, okay, can we modify the Constitution in these ways? How about can we do this in regards to same-sex marriage? So Obergefell and Hodges in 2015 had a 5-4 ruling, very close ruling, and decided the 14th Amendment guaranteed the right of a person to marry someone of the same sex. So this case instantly overturned state laws that were intended to protect the definition of marriage. So now we have, what is marriage? So when I look at marriage, of course, I look at what the Bible says about marriage. But in this, the Constitution basically ruled, into the area of same-sex marriage. So just remember, this is Obergefell and Hodges. I think that's how you pronounce it, Obergefell and Hodges. Okay, I'm going to stop there and we'll finish up the rest of this in the next video because we're getting kind of long here. And then we'll get into the next administration.